8월 15일 오늘은 제77주년 광복절입니다. 오늘 여의도 초대석은 세계적인 기업가이면서 평화통일운동에 매진하고 있는 문현진 글로벌 피스 파운데이션 세계평화재단 의장 겸 UCI 그룹 회장을 만나 관련 얘기 들어보겠습니다. 회장님 안녕하세요.
안녕하세요.
이렇게 제77주년 광복절 뜻깊은 날에 뵙게 돼서 더 의미가 있는 것 같습니다.
네, 고맙습니다.
바로 본론으로 들어가도록 하겠습니다. 12일이죠. 지난주 금요일 여의도 파크원 개관식을 하셨는데 먼저 개관 축하드리겠습니다.
고맙습니다.
서울이 국제금융시장에서 홍콩을 대신할 환태평양권 금융허브 역할을 해야 한다는 지론과 구상을 갖고 계신 걸로 알고 있는데 먼저 이 말씀부터 좀 듣도록 하겠습니다.
제가 영어도 해도 괜찮아죠?
네.
그래요. That is my dream. That Seoul becomes the new financial center, not only of this region, but the entire Pacific Rim. And I believe that it can become that financial center, very much like New York and London is in the Atlantic sphere. Yet, there has to be fundamental changes because there are systemic problems within the South Korean, especially financial system, that is tied to the past of the military dictatorship in terms of South Korean history. So this has to be dealt with, and I think I addressed that issue in my speech.
펀더멘탈 체인지라고 하면 구체적으로 어떤 거를 말씀을 하시는 건가요?
I believe there has to be banking reform. The fundamental problem with the financial system in Korea is that politics is too intertwined with banking. The fact that you actually have a pseudo-government banking system where bureaucrats run the banks, not based upon market forces, but based upon crony capitalism, which is the anachronistic system that's tied to the former military dictatorship. The problem here is that only the chaebols or those who have means can access Korean capital. The average Korean does not have that potential. That's why I believe that there has to be a democratization of the banking system and that banking should be privatized. Through privatization of banking, what's going to happen is you're going to allow the market forces to determine how capital flows. And through that, I believe more Koreans will be participating in the capital creation process. So that's something that's absolutely necessary.
금융시장이나 은행의 중요성을 감안하면은 정부나 관료의 개입이 어느 정도는 필요한 거 아닌가요? 완전히 풀어줄 수는 없는 거 아닌가요?
Right now, basically, it's bureaucrats that run the Korean banking system. This is very problematic. That is why, if you look at the financial landscape of Korea, most people who have a great idea, unlike other Western democracies, such as America, cannot get the capital to basically finance their great idea. So if you look at the South Korean economy, 90% of the economy is run by the Korean chaebols. They only employ 10% of the workforce. But as the chaebols become larger international conglomerates, what naturally will follow is they will have the jobs that are currently in Korea exported abroad to places where you have lower cost in labor. That's what all multi-international corporations do. So what's going to happen? Who's going to fill that void? That void can only be filled by small to mid-cap corporations. The reason why you don't have that in the Korean economy is because of banking. This has to change.
재벌 체제 문제점을 말씀해 주셨는데 다시 금융, 은행 얘기로 들어가면은 파크원 개관이 서울이 국제금융 허브로 발전하는 것과 어떤 연관이 있을까요?
Like I said in my speech, the Park One project itself set a new precedent in Korea. It is the largest project financing in Korean history, outside the government and chaebol system. This is a tremendous win in terms of what the future can be, right? However, in order for greater capital participation, you need to privatize Korean banking so that more Koreans can be involved in the in the economic development of South Korea.
제가 자료를 좀 찾아보니까 유엔 산업개발기구 제조업 지수가 우리나라가 3위인데 글로벌 파이낸셜 센터 지수 금융 서비스 순위는 세계 20위입니다. 좀 갭이 있는데 이거를 뭐 해소를 하려면은 뭐 어떤 게 가장 시급한 과제일까요?
Banking reform.
뱅킹 리폼.
That's why you have to have banking reform. That's why the vision of eventually having Korea become the financial center of Asia, there has to be fundamental systemic changes. Financial systemic banking changes here in Korea.
뱅킹 리폼 관련해서 어떤 점들을 주안을 두고 그럼 구체적으로 실천을 해나가야 될까요?
Well, I think the first step is actually privatization. You need to privatize banking here in Korea.
저항이 있을 것 같은데요. 그걸 하겠다고 하면은.
I think if the case can be made and explained in the simple way that I'm explaining it, I think there will be tremendous support for that type of movement because it's actually the natural extension of the democratization of not just the political system but the economy. Because what you want is you want the free market to take hold in Korea that allows more people to participate in the creation of capital. That's what you want. So that you create mid to small cap companies that fill the the job void that will be created as the chaebols become more multi-international.
지금 파크원 서울 단지는 성공적으로 운영이 되고 있는데 가령 광주 같은 지방에서 이런 복합 단지를 조성하고 운영을 하려면은 뭐가 필요할까요? 조언 한 말씀 부탁드리겠습니다.
You never know. I might create another Park One facility down there in Gwangju.
Really?
Yes, you never know.
Okay.
Because this is, like I said, this is one of, or this is just the beginning.
Just the beginning.
Just the beginning.
알겠습니다. 지금 남북 통일 글로벌 평화 운동도 아주 열정적으로 매진하고 계시다고 제가 들었습니다. 8월 15일 오늘 제77주년 광복절을 맞아서 광복 80주년 맞이 코리안 드림 실현을 위한 2022 통일 실천 축제 한마당 행사를 개최하셨는데 이건 뭐 어떤 행사인지 설명을 좀 해주시죠.
This is not just a national holiday. This really earmarks the hope and the promise of what liberation entailed back in 1945 for the Korean people, especially those who had given of themselves and tied themselves to the Korean independence movement. So, in one sense, through the Korean Dream, I've reclaimed not only the aspirations of Korea's founding, rooted in the Honginggan ideal, but also the aspirations of the independence movement, and especially the hope and the aspiration that was exemplified in 1945. And that's one of the reasons why right now we're planning for next 3 years until 2025, which will earmark the 80th anniversary of Korean liberation, to inspire tens of millions of Koreans here in South Korea to own the spirit of Honginggan and the aspirations of the independence movement and what the day of liberation truly represented, and seek to unify the Korean homeland. Like I was explaining to another media company, I don't believe that unification will happen based upon the leadership of South Korea or North Korea. I believe unification will happen bottom up from the Korean people themselves. If Korean people become the owner of the Korean dream and stand in solidarity to realize that vision, believe me, unification will happen. That is why many times as I speak to many leaders, I remind them of the quote, the prophetic quote that Genghis Khan gave. He said, if one person has a dream, it is but a dream. But if everyone can own that dream, it can become reality. That is why I wrote The Korean Dream. Because I want every Korean to be the owner of that dream. And if they do, I believe, very much like Genghis Khan said, if you become the owner of that dream, then it will become reality. But I believe unification will happen bottom up, not top down. And I think many South Koreans are led to believe that somehow unification will happen through their political leaders. It's not going to happen through your political leaders.
바텀업 방식의 통일이 어떻게 가능할까요? 구체적으로?
Are you a student of history?
Yeah.
What happened in German unification? Was it Helmut Kohl and the head of East Germany that basically brought about unification of Germany? It was the German people themselves. The politicians naturally, when there was an upswell of the people basically going on the Berlin Wall, breaking down the Berlin Wall, that they ended up supporting it. It was not led by any negotiation among the top leadership of both nations. It happened bottom up. What happened to the downfall of the Soviet Union? Was it something that the Communist Party heads determined, okay, now the Soviet Empire is over? No, it was bottom up. Every major change, even in the history of South Korea, how did the military dictatorship come to an end? It was the South Korean people that went to the streets and demanded for the democratization of Korea. Every major change will happen bottom up, not top down.
콜롬비아 대학교에서 사학을 공부하신 걸로 알고 있는데 역사에 대해서 해박하신 것 같습니다.
I was a history major in Columbia, and
지금 통일에 대한 확신이 있으신 것 같은데 통일을 실천하는 사람들이라는 단체를 창설하고 후원하고 계신다고 들었습니다. 이건 어떤 단체고 어떤 일을 하고 있나요?
so as you know, AKU is the largest movement for unification ever in the history of South Korea. It encompasses all of the civic organizations and groups of South Korea. This is what gives me tremendous hope for the future of Korean unification. That you have so many citizens of this nation, and not just this nation, but Koreans that are also living abroad, the diaspora community, that are now participating in the unification process through the Korean dream.
개관식 축사에서도 코리안 드림을 상당히 강조를 하셨는데 한국에 온 이유가 코리안 드림 비전을 공유하기 위해서 오셨다 이런 말씀까지 하셨는데 구체적으로 코리안 드림 비전이 뭐 어떤 거라고 말씀을 하실 수 있을까요?
The Korean dream vision is the dream of building a model nation that will benefit all of humanity. I believe that Korea, upon unification, based upon this vision, as I outline in my book, can become a global leader. Not just one of the influential nations in the world. I'm talking about a global leader.
언론 보도를 좀 제가 찾아보니까 우리 정부와 미국은 한반도 통일을 최종 목표로 정책을 추구해야 한다 이렇게 말씀을 하셨습니다. 왜 한반도 통일을 최종 목표로 정책을 추구해야 되는 건가요? 통일 비용도 뭐 만만치 않고 지금 사는 것도 크게 안 불편하고 그런데.
That's where you've been misinformed. And I know that many people cite the CIA study of Korean unification where they put the burden on the cost of unification on South Korea. That is not the Korean dream vision. So one of the things that we're doing in terms of our work, especially in the United States, is to have the top policymakers in terms of foreign policy recognize that Korea and Korean unification is a strategic objective of American policy, where they will deal with the nuclear issue as well as the issue of peace in this region, which is of their interest. So if you think about the United States over 20 years spending close to $3 trillion in Afghanistan, which basically led to nothing, when they recognize that this region is the most significant strategic priority for the future of not only the United States, but the free world, you don't think that they will participate in making sure that unification happens smoothly and in a way that benefits everyone? So it's not just a matter of moving nations, it's actually also looking at unification as an investment opportunity. And that's one of the reasons why this Park 1 and banking reform is so high on my agenda. Because I want South Koreans, because I don't know. What's your background in education?
대학교에서 저는 신문방송학 전공을 하고
So I'm just going to explain to you like a background from a business education. All the assumptions that you build in is everything. The assumption that unification is going to be carried in terms of cost by South Korea alone is a faulty assumption. It's not. Why? Because it's of strategic geopolitical value for unification to happen smoothly and peacefully and in a way that basically strengthens the ideals of freedom and human rights in this region in the world. Just like you had in the Ukrainian war, basically all the Western democracies supporting the Ukrainian cause for freedom, that type of environment can be created for Korean unification. Korean people will not be bearing the cost of unification alone.
오늘이 광복절인데 뭐 일본은 말할 것도 없고 미국이나 중국이 정말 진심으로 한반도의 통일을 원할까요?
신경 써야지 돼요. Don't just blow off Japan. It is in Japan's interest because the greatest threat to Japan right now is North Korea. To see peaceful unification of the Korean Peninsula and the future nation that is created, which represents and champions freedom and fundamental human rights, is a nation that Japan would love to see realized. So I would put Japan even in that pool of nations that would support that type of initiative.
자유국가로의 통일은 결국 북한을 흡수 통일하는 방식이 될 텐데 북한이 그거에 응할 가능성이 단 1이라도 있을까요?
그것 때문에 it's all your assumptions that determine the answers. If your assumptions are wrong, then your answers are going to be wrong. As a Korean, historically, do we like to be subordinated or subjugated by other larger powers? No, 절대 no, 절대 no. That is the Korean natural instinct. Do you think North Korea wants to be a puppet of China?
No.
If you look at what are the alternatives ahead of them? What are the alternatives ahead of them? If they do not embrace peaceful unification of the Korean Peninsula, that will be a benefit for all the Korean people, even them. What's the alternative? Oh, what's the alternative for North Korea? They're going to be a puppet of China. China that seeks to be the geopolitical hegemon in the world. Do the Korean people want that?
말씀을
I don't think even the North Korean leadership wants that. So, unification is inevitable. The question is what type of unification. That is why the dream, the Korean dream, is so significant. That is why I wrote it.
알겠습니다. 다시 파크원 개관식 얘기 하나만 더 여쭤보면은 그 축사에서 이렇게 말씀을 하셨습니다. 선친과의 약속을 지켰다라고 말씀을 하셨는데 좀 감회가 남다르셨던 것 같습니다. 어떠셨습니까?
The creation of Park One or a facility such as this has been my father's dream. For 50 years, this has been postponed for various numbers of reasons. I think I just touched upon some, but for various numbers of reasons, it just wasn't able to happen. But the fact that we finally built this facility in such a way that exceeded probably every expectation, and that can truly be the beacon of hope for the Korean people and represent the future of what Korea can become, is something that I'm tremendously proud of. And I feel that I fulfilled my promise to my father when I undertook responsibility for this project. So this is a very, very bittersweet moment for me.
알겠습니다. 뭐 아버지에 대한 기억이 남다르신 것 같은데 시간상 마무리 말씀 부탁드리겠습니다.
Conclusion should be that Park One should be symbolic of a seed that is being planted to bring a tremendous wind of hope, change, and transformation for the better to this land of Korea. And eventually, with the transformation in this land of Korea to the rest of the world.
알겠습니다. 광복절 뜻깊은 날 좋은 말씀 많이 들려주셔서 감사합니다. 대한민국이 환태평양권 금융 허브로 도약하고 그리고 통일을 이루는데 앞으로 더 큰 역할을 해주시기를 바라겠습니다.
주인 되세요. 그러면 그렇게 될까요?
알겠습니다. 오늘 말씀 잘 들었습니다. 감사합니다. 네, 지금까지 문현진 글로벌 피스 파운데이션 세계 평화재단 회장 겸 UCI 그룹 회장과 함께 서울에서 전해드렸습니다.